Hello, welcome back to the Inside Elland Road podcast with me, Joe Donoghue, and YEP chief football writer Graham Smith. It was 4 of the best in midweek at Watford and the perfect response to bowing out of the FA Cup at the fourth round a few days prior. Some would say that was a convenient defeat. Is that how you describe it, Graham?
Nope.
You've kind of viewed my outlook as bowing out of the FA Cup as maybe a blessing in disguise, as being that of a cynic. Why is that?
I'm just an idealist. I love football. I like to see Leeds United play football. I also think that the FA Cup was a great vehicle for keeping certain players happier and fitter and sharper. And also, it's not like they went out of the FA Cup at the hands of Liverpool or
Well, Liverpool aren't in the FA Cup anymore.
Yeah, I know, but you know what I'm saying, Joe. What I should have said was Nottingham Forest. You know, the men of the minute. I tell you what, though, Forest, absolutely beautiful, just stunning. No, okay, so I'll rephrase. It's not like they went out of the FA Cup at the hands of who's still in Nottingham Forest. They went out of the FA Cup at home to Millwall. It was a winnable fixture, and the team that came in, I felt, had sufficient strength. Yes, 10 changes, disrupts your flow, disrupts your rhythm. They all train together. They all know each other. A lot of them have played significant minutes together this season. Ampadu was in the side. Byron was in the side. Struijk was in the side. Gnonto and Ramazani are two of the best wingers in the division. Rothwell has been stellar this season. For me, Leeds had enough about them to go and win that game. And I feel like individuals had a chance to shine and they didn't. You know, even if it's hard as a collective to play with fluency because you haven't played together as a team, you can still do your job. And I feel like individuals were lacking on the day. I thought Ampadu had a shocker for one. And on a day when you kind of needed him to have a good game, I think he had one of his worst games. But it is what it is. I don't think Daniel Farke was shedding too many tears. And no one else seems to be. So we move on.
Yeah, and I think Leeds moved on pretty quickly as well. They went to Vicarage Road on Tuesday, as did we, and it was as you were really since the Coventry game. They blew Watford away inside 35 minutes. And I think my favourite thing about that game was that for the first 10 or 15 minutes of the second half, Leeds didn't really do much attacking. They just kind of sat. They were 3-0 up. It was a case of get your rest. And then on about 60, 61 minutes, they went, you know what? Let's get a fourth and kill this off. And they did. It was very workmanlike. It was very matter of fact. Altanaka ran Tom Ince in a circle. I mean, if I imagine people have watched that fourth goal again and again just because of the intricate nature of it. But I cannot get over just how bad the defending from Ince is. Tanaka takes him in a turning circle, and then he just defends the wrong side. But yeah, it was one of the best away performances I think we've seen this season, and it reinforces that there is a first 11 that Farke has, and if they continue to play that way away from home, because we know that their home form is not going to be too great of an issue. If they continue to play like that away from home in their upcoming fixtures, then I do think, you know, in about a month's time, we might be starting thinking about, okay, let's get some summer planning in place.
Get the bus out.
Get the bus out, yeah. They'll be allowed to do it this time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the game in general was very, very enjoyable. And yeah, Watford, they kind of knew they were beaten, didn't they? They just, after goals 1 and 2 went in at such short notice, not short notice, in quick succession.
They didn't get any notice. Leeds did not serve any prior notice for those goals. They just went and scored them. Inconsiderate.
I mean, we should talk about Dan James. I spoke to him after the game, and interestingly enough, he wasn't aware of the chant. He's here, he's there, he's every something where. I sort of said after we sort of switched the mics off, I was like, at least they've got a chant for you now, because that was one of the things that, you know, he thought, oh well, you know, everyone's got a chant, but me. He does have one now, but he hasn't been aware of it. So I'd implore everyone that if you are there at Elland Road, or if you are at the away grounds. Sing it a bit louder. Make sure he knows. Really emphasize the Daniel James.
Is he cloth-eared? Surely he's heard it. He must be
focused.
He's like a hammerhead, little hammerhead shark. Really uncharacteristically fast hammerhead shark. Yes, I enjoyed Watford. I thought it was funny that Tom cleverly said they didn't play at the weekend and we did, referencing the fact that this Leeds team they played didn't play at the weekend, other than Ampadu. And it was as if the FA Cup game just hadn't taken place. They literally carried on where they left off at Coventry. And it was a pretty clever performance because I wouldn't say they let Watford have the ball, but they didn't dominate possession in the way that they normally do. They just took it off Watford in really great areas at really great times and then killed them with what they did in transition. Don't call it all a counter-attacking performance, though, or we'll be getting an angry letter from Mr. D. Farker of Harrogate, because he doesn't like it when people categorize goals as counter-attack goals just because the finish was quick, because it might be a team goal. But the counter-attack was important. It was also important that Kayembe became the 12th man for a time. That assist for Dan James was pretty painful. Bless him. Tom cleverly said that he'll never dig him out for that because he's showing for the ball. And he said that's the manager's responsibility because he's asked them to play like that. He's definitely not asked them to play no-look passes across the pitch in their own defensive third. And when you have a player like Dan James, or when you have Manor Solomon, or even Brendan Aronson, you are able to attack space very quickly and very precisely. And Leeds were very, very good at it. And how good were the finishes, by the way, from James? I mean, the first one was good. The second one, outstanding. He's a different animal. And you can talk about, you can caveat it and say, yeah, in the Championship, because yes, you do get a bit of extra time and space, and maybe defenders make mistakes that Premier League defenders wouldn't. But he still has to finish that. And I don't think a Premier League goalkeeper gets near that second finish. I don't think anyone does.
No, it's an excellent strike. And how many times have we seen, maybe the Premier League iteration of Dan James places that over the crossbar. I think a lot of it comes down to confidence and momentum and rhythm, and he's always had the ability. But he's playing with a real swagger at the moment, even in his off the ball work. Yeah,
he's completely self-assured that he knows he's going to score.
It's I think the epitome of that was when he tried the shot from just over halfway, chasing the ball down, which was not an easy ball to defend against, chesting it, getting there ahead of the defender, and then just thinking, you know what, goalkeeper's off his line here. I'm a little bit off balance, but I'm still going to go for it. Even though I know for a fact if I try and beat this man in a foot race, I'm going to get to the box before. I mean, that was for a hat-trick. He's never scored a professional hat-trick before, so it would have been very nice. But the 2 wasn't bad, was it? Into double figures. I think he got 13 last year, and on the current form, you'd back him to surpass that. So
I think he's in with a shot of 20. Just as much as Joel Peru is, just because of the form he's in. And the fact that he's going to get so many chances, and the fact that he's shooting more relentlessly than just about anyone. He's up there in the division for total amount of shots this season. He's right up there for shots on target. No one at Leeds is shooting more often from outside the area. He just backs himself time and time again. But the point, we discussed this earlier in the week, he's being judicious with it. Largi Ramazani has pretty much one thing in mind within 35 yards of goal, and that's to pull the trigger. Whereas Dan James, there have been a lot of times when he could have shot this season, and actually he squared the ball for Manor Solomon. He squared the ball to set up an own goal at Swansea. He squared the ball for Joel Peru to score. Or he's cutting back onto his left and he's crossing for the far post. He's not just single-minded in the final third. He has been pretty unselfish at times this season. And it's made him very unpredictable and very difficult to defend against.
Yeah, I completely agree. What else did we observe at Watford? Oh, yes. So obviously Tuesday night, You know, 7:45 kickoff. It's going to necessitate an overnight stay. Graham, do you want to tell do you want to tell the listeners where you? In fact, you know what? I'm not going to spoil it. Tell the listeners and the viewers, the watchers, the viewers as well, what transpired with your hotel.
There is a visual aid for this. I don't know if you have the skills to splice it in at this point, or maybe we can just put it on socials. But
I could potentially, yeah. I think
yeah.
I know which one it is, yeah.
So it's the video, or
I'm not sure I can put the video in.
Or a still. Well, if this was
Definitely
Sky News, this was Sky News, Joe, the footage would be rolling as I spoke.
You haven't started speaking yet.
Okay, so get to Watford, get to my travel lodge. Plenty of time. I'm going to be able to probably go and get a bit of food, or even just a nice nap before the game, until the lady at the desk says, yeah, we do have your booking. Yeah, good, check, for next Tuesday, because someone, me, had made a glaring error. At this point, I'm not panicking because I'm a grown man, Joe. I'm 42. I might be in a big, scary city like London, but I'm not Paddington. I'm not going to need a family to take me in. So I got on my phone, started to look at hotels nearby because I wanted somewhere within walking distance because I've got a train the next day from Watford High Street Station. And also I need to be able to get to the ground relatively quickly. And also it needs to come inside the work expenses budget. Crucial topic. Sadly, all the hotels appeared to be full up, probably Leeds fans. And I went on booking.com, and the only place that was readily available at that notice, within a walking distance, within budget, was a little flat not far from the Travel Lodge and not far from Vicarage Road, that was Harry Potter themed. And when I booked it, I thought it's one of these places that like advertises itself as a Harry Potter themed place because the studio is not that far away, and it might, and it might,
a little teaser there,
and it might like have, I don't know, some Harry Potter, like, I don't know, plates and cups or mugs or a poster or two or a picture. But no, this place was bedecked from floor to ceiling, from wall to wall, with every single bit of Harry Potter memorabilia and tat that you could possibly hope for or imagine, including a Slytherin bedsheet, duvet cover.
A Slytherin bedsheet.
It had
an entire bedspread, 4-poster bed,
Slytherin bed. Yeah, Slytherin bed. The toilet had Expelliarmus next to the flush.
Incredible.
It was, and the worst part of it was that the guy who let me in was dead excited because they only completed on the flat a month ago, and they'd only just finished like doing it up, I think, a week prior. Nobody else had stayed in this Harry Potter flat, and I was continually trying to say, yeah, I just needed a place, at short notice, just needed any flat, really, any room. I wasn't specifically trying to book this room. Please believe me. And he was just ignoring and just talking, jabbering on excitedly about the room and how great it was. So I don't think he bought it for a second. I think he thought that I was a grown 42-year-old serious journalist on a work trip who'd booked himself a Harry Potter themed flat.
It is honestly an incredible tale of woe and hilarity at your expense. Just incredible. When you said that you had a story to sort of rival any previous funny tale in the workplace, I didn't quite believe you. I thought, you know what, maybe it's kind of up there, but it's not the funniest. Oh my god, that is running it very close. The existing funniest one, that is running it really close. What I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and share my screen on the stream. I've checked to make sure that there's nothing, there's no state secrets which are going to be revealed, but I do think it's essential. We're going to try this. Oh no, this is difficult.
It's beyond your technical wizardry, Joe.
It is technically, yeah. I mean, is that Is that sharing?
Yes, that's sharing.
So for anybody who is watching the YouTube version, that is what Graham
Can also see your screen roll if you look closely enough.
Yeah, you can, but I checked to make sure there was nothing, nothing weird in there.
But I do think that we should stay there next year if Leeds go to Watford in the FA Cup, or if Watford go up via the playoffs and are also a Premier League team. That's definitely where we should stay if we go to Vicarage Road.
I cannot stress how uncomfortable I would be staying there. That honestly,
I woke up in the middle of the night and I could swear I could hear Robbie Coltrane crying just off in the distance.
It just, incredible. Went down impeccably in the press room. Nobody was expecting that. Everybody enjoyed it. I mean, Graham, by the looks of that picture of you dressed head to toe in Gryffindor gear with Hedwig in the cage behind you, that looks like you were enjoying yourself as well.
I had to own it. There's no way I could. I had to own that because everyone was going to laugh at me, so I could either laugh along or cry. So I chose to laugh.
Yeah, it was that was incredible. Something else that I really enjoyed about Watford was there was a tweet by a Leeds fan who you replied to, and it was he'd obviously sent his young child to bed because the game kicked off so late. Obviously, people got to get their kids away to bed. Can't be keeping them up until 11 o'clock at night to wait for Daniel Farke's press conference. And it was sort of like a little scrap of paper, and it was the scoreline and the goal scorers, and it was intended for when said child wakes up in the morning, they can find out what the result was, which I think is a really old school but also really nice way of doing things. Of course, Graham, you couldn't help yourself. You replied, needs attendance and man of the match, but otherwise really very wholesome. So, kind of take with one hand, give with one hand, take away with the other. But what you weren't expecting was what you were not expecting was what I will say tweet of the week, possibly tweet of the month, and maybe even my favorite of this season so far, from Stephen High, Steez1, the username on Twitter. And again, maybe I shouldn't be saying this on a podcast which is ultimately a work podcast, but I really liked it. I thought it was brilliant. And he said, needs bucket loads of intrusive ads everywhere so you can't see what he's written. Which, you know what, as a pet peeve to you and I, Graham, and something which is outside of our control, thought that was really, really on the nose and funny and spot on. So, Stephen, well played. You got a massive laugh from the pair of us. I had it shared to me by lots of people who don't work in journalism, just friends from outside the world of that, who've probably had the misfortune of trying to click into an article before. But yeah, that was another highlight from the Watford game. And again, just I would like to say the who was it? I'm just trying to get the at Sean Meddins. Yeah, that's some extra dad credits there for the telling your daughter what the score was.
I feel like if he really, really loved his daughter, he would handcraft like a mock screen and paint it like teletext with the score and the goal scorers on. I mean, that's probably if you just wanted to take it to the next level, if he really did love his child. Can we talk about the move for the fourth goal?
Yes.
Because that's probably the best thing about that entire trip, other than my Hogwarts disaster. That move started from Jayden Bogle adequately performing an ailing flop on the touchline, deep in Leeds half. Leeds send the free kick back to Meslier. The move then from Leeds is just total football. And yes, the marking was slack and the press wasn't great from Watford, but some of the football Leeds have played this season at times. The goal at Hillsborough was one. The goal at Derby was different because it was more of a sustained period of possessional dominance, back and forth, left and right, and then they cut through them. This was just cutting Watford to shreds from back to front. They did that whole out, back and through passing move. It went up the left. Piru got involved. Tanaka was involved. Firpo was involved. And then Tanaka gets back on the ball. And that, like you mentioned earlier, it was very funny watching Tom Ince chase Tanaka's tail, just round and round. Like when a dad is playing, I don't know, tag with a child and literally runs them in a circle because the kid can't quite keep up. That's what it was like. But then from that moment on, the way the ball was moved, into the feet of Solomon, who stays onside, takes the ball brilliantly, turns so that his back's to goal and he can play it back across. Tanaka leaps over it so that Peru can get on it. He shimmies and sends Pollock. Which Pollock was it again?
It was Matty Pollock. Yes,
to
not
the ground.
Jamie.
And then the finish was just super cool. And what I loved about it was Tanaka really enjoyed that goal, probably because he played a really nice role in it, but also because they executed just perfect football in perfection from the goalkeeper all the way to the goal. And I feel like the rest of the team really, like, they recognized what a good goal it was in the celebrations. When you score a fourth goal normally in a rout, your celebrations can be a bit muted unless the goal scorer is like a special one, who hasn't had a goal for a while or it's his first goal. Normally the celebrations aren't that much. Joe Rodon jumping on the back of people, giving it full beans. Ethan Ampadu joining in. Firpo looked beyond himself with delight. To me, that was saying, God, we are good. That was very good. And I think it must be incredibly pleasing to play football like that when it comes off.
What I will say is that the Tanaka spiral, if you want to term it that, or the Tanaka turning circle, that was a good element to that goal. But my favourite was Joel Piru's part, because the feet are really good. The finish is really calm amidst all the bodies. There's also, I think, 6 or 7 Leeds shirts. I think it was 6 in the end. 6 Leeds shirts inside the penalty area at the time when the ball hits the back of the net, which is, just an indicator of just how attacking this team can be and the intention. But my favourite part of it was Piru, essentially, because Matty Pollock kind of comes sliding in to try and to try and intervene. Piru effectively dropped a Pollock.
Very good, Sam. Very good.
In the process. And also, there was also a radio journalist before kickoff who dropped a Pollock, but in a different different format, which you included in your off-camera moments. Who, let's just say, likes to imagine that he's friendly with all of these professional footballers. And as he's trying to attract the attention of Watford central defender Matty Pollock, shouts, Jamie. See, Graham, there's one problem with that. Yes. Jamie is Matty Pollock's dad, from a past generation. And the name might ring a bell for some people because he was the star of many own goals and gaffes videos and DVDs of the early 2000s and late 90s because of his own goal, where he sort of lobs the ball over a striker's head and then heads it over his own goalkeeper, which in turn relegated Manchester City during the mid-90s. That was possibly a more apt way of saying that someone dropped a Pollock at Vicarage Road on Tuesday night. Although what I will say is, having eavesdropped on their subsequent conversation, where the Watford defender did say, "That's not me, that's my dad," and everyone kind of just went, "Oh, that's gotta hurt." Matty Pollock did kind of suggest that Leeds probably would score, and you know what, he was right. So you know what, that was they were kind of a few of the interesting behind the scenes moments from Vicarage Road on Tuesday. Where should we go next? What should we talk about? Actually, you know what? We're talking about radio journalists, and I have an apology to make. I don't think that this individual listens to the podcast. What with being an ex-professional footballer, but at the Millwall game, we got chatting. He was doing some co-commentary, and Graham and I, mainly led by Graham, we've taken. What's that? What's that revisionism? Graham and I have previously, only on one occasion, and in good faith, maybe taken the mick out of an absolute howler of a miss that this individual made whilst in the prime of his playing career, shall we say. I would like to apologise for that, because said individual is actually a top bloke and really, really nice. So, just going to show that we're never too big on the Inside Ellen Road podcast to admit that we're wrong. Well, at least one of us isn't. And yeah, if you are listening, certain individual, I don't expect that you are. Yeah, look forward to our next debrief in the press room at Leeds.
Yeah. Did the team selection surprise you at Watford a little bit? Because I had a little hope in my heart that Pascal would come back in, play alongside Rodon, and Ampadu would move back into midfield. So I was a little bit surprised that didn't happen. But again, in league terms, he didn't change a team that battered Coventry and then they went and battered Watford. So he was completely justified. But at some point, are we going to get the Ampadu Tanaka midfield we want to see?
Yeah, in the Premier League.
You don't think it'll happen before then?
No, I think it will, but I'm not sure it'll happen for a sustained period. I think he really liked Gruev in there, and you know what? Gruev did nothing wrong. He
really
did
didn't.
really well. I actually like the Gruev Tanaka partnership, and given that we haven't really seen Ampadu Tanaka together, I think it's absolutely fine for the time being. I don't think the issue with seeing that partnership is that it's too attacking. I think Ampadu slots in, fulfills that deep six role that Gruev would, but while it's working, and I mean, boy, is it working! I don't see the need for a change. This way he can, because Farke's been very cautious about Pascal Struijk's fitness, hasn't he? And thinking, well, we don't want to break him again. I think while the defense is not conceding goals, whilst the midfield is controlling games and keeping things ticking over, I think Daniel Farke is absolutely justified in saying, well, Rodon and Ampadu, they work fine, reasonably well together. And Gruev and Tanaka is a nice little pairing as well. It doesn't need to be broken, and he's then able to bring on Struijk with 15 minutes of games to go, just to get him up to speed. And just on that point, I was looking at the numbers of the number of shots conceded and shots on target conceded, XG conceded, and goals conceded by the different central defensive partnerships between last season and this season. It was posted by, unfortunately, there's no actual name here. We'll just have to go with the infamous.
Right.
Right. The infamous. Thank you for posting this. And this season, of the 32 games, the central defensive partnership has been Struijk and Rodon for 24 of them, and Ampadu and Rodon for 8 of them. They're conceding roughly the same number of shots per 90, with just over 6. They're conceding pretty much just 2 shots on target per 90, which again is astoundingly low. The XG is per 90 conceded is around 0.6, and again the variance in the different partnerships is minimal. Admittedly, because there's a greater sample size, the goals per 90 that have been conceded is more with Struijk and Rodon, but even still, that's 0.66 per 90, whereas Ampadu and Rodon together is 0.38. So not a huge difference. Compare that with last season, when Struijk and Rodon played together 18 times. They conceded shots per 90. They were conceding over 9, so that's 3 more shots per game. And they were conceding around 1 more shot on target per game. The XG conceded was higher, and the number of goals that conceded per 90 was higher as well. And the same for Ampadu and Rodon's partnership, which started 19 times. So they are really improving, or rather they have improved, regardless of who the personnel. I mean, obviously Rodon is the constant in there, but Leeds are conceding effectively 3 shots fewer per game this season. They're conceding fewer big chances. They're conceding fewer shots on target, which says that the understanding, the relationship between whoever starts, the spacing, the understanding of the defensive structure It's all better.
Sorry, I was just having flashbacks to Square Ball when you dominated the conversation in a similar way. Yeah,
I'm
it's
not
a really
sure that
good
was
point.
the case. I
It's
think
a
that's not true.
it's a really good point. One thing you'll notice when opposition managers say nice things about Leeds, like Tom Cleverley, for example, who I think direct quote was, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate," or words to that effect. They never point out how good Leeds are defensively. They always talk about fabulous footballers, great attack inside, great athleticism, Premier League quality. You know, Tom Cleverley essentially said they had the same level as Fulham, mid-table Premier League team. But no one ever says, God, they are defensively sound, aren't they? You know, no opposition manager ever says, you know, we just came up against a Joe Rodon in his prime today. But that is such a big part of who Leeds are. And Burnley are rightly getting plaudits for their clean sheets. But Leeds should be as well, because they are incredible, defensively incredible. I mean, that stat that you unearthed about them not conceding a headed goal this season is wild. I myself probably would have kept it until the end of the season because you know what's going to happen next. But
Oh yeah, we've seen this story before.
But you know, defensively they've been excellent, and you know what? A word for Illan Meslier, because his form of late has been good. He's made some really really good saves in games that Leeds were ahead in. Well, actually, no, they weren't even. There's been a couple of saves he's made at important times in games, but he's also made saves when the game was won, and that's really satisfying for Leeds too, and for Farke, because the clean sheets are important. The clean sheets are a huge part of this ridiculous goal difference they've got that is worth an extra point. And Meslier has been a big part of that for the last few games. His distribution has not been an issue at all. He played a really nice under pressure long ball for Peru to challenge that was pretty spot on, to be honest. Peru didn't win the ball, but he was able to put the defender under enough pressure that Aronson picked up the seconds. Then Leeds went forward and they won a throw in. From that throw in, they scored a goal. And Junior Firpo, amid the celebrations, turned around, pointed at Meslier and applauded him for the pass, because it was the pass under pressure that it all stemmed from. And yeah, we will talk about his mistakes when they happen, and we have done. But when he plays well, you also have to say it. And I think he's been well worth his clean sheets of late. It's not just been a case of sitting back and watching the defence defend. He's played a part too.
What you're saying is 2020-21 season, Illan Meslier is back. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not. I didn't say that. Don't put words in my mouth. That's what I do. That's my thing. No, but I am saying big improvement, and timely as well, given the game that's coming up on Monday. Very, very timely.
Yeah, we'll get into what we expect from Sunderland, what we expect from Leeds at Elland Road against Sunderland on Monday night in part 2 of this podcast, because we're waiting to hear from Daniel Farke. So we'll record part 2 after he's spoken this afternoon. But before that, there is a statement going out from Leeds United this afternoon, which by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be after the embargo, so we're in the clear. But it relates to the Manor Solomon chant, which I'm sure many of you will have heard in away end, but also at the most recent game against Millwall in the FA Cup. Leeds have issued a statement which reads: Leeds United again condemn the football chant containing an anti-Palestine lyric aimed at Manor Solomon, having already done so through comments to local and national media outlets in December. Hate crime and discriminatory language or chanting is not acceptable at Leeds United, and the club has a zero tolerance policy towards discrimination abuse of all kinds. The club has received a large number of complaints from Leeds United supporters regarding the chant, and had hoped the initial strategy of condemning it through the media and working with supporter groups would prevent this from happening in the future, but it has sadly become more prominent in recent matches, including at Elland Road. After monitoring the situation at recent home games, the origins of the chant at Elland Road appear to come from the Norman Hunter South Stand, particularly in blocks FA5, FA6, SS5, SS6. And the statement goes on to say, if you do hear discriminatory language being used at games, to use the text service for the matchday incident text service to report those incidents. Graham, I think whilst we were expecting some form of action from Leeds, it's refreshing to hear that things which are ultimately discriminatory and are upsetting to a lot of people, that the club are taking a stand on this.
Yeah, I think there's been an awful lot of complaints from various sections of the fan base about this chant in particular. I mean, we don't even really have to go into the reasons why you shouldn't be singing it. I think it's abundantly obvious. And Leeds United have felt it appropriate to take this action and to say that they will ban fans who are singing it. You might get the odd person who says, well, what about the Jimmy Savile chants? And you know what? That is something that needs to be addressed. And Leeds behind the scenes are lobbying for that to be classified as a tragedy chant, which it always should have been. I contacted the EFL about it, the Jimmy Savile thing, and they said it was something they were aware of, something that they were looking at. I think the sooner the action is taken on that, the better as well. But it's whataboutery to an extent when it's brought up in response to the Solomon chant. You don't want to hear any of those things sung at football games. You don't want to have people having to explain to young children what certain chants are about when the subject matter is so horrific. And the sooner that Ellen Road doesn't hear the Solomon chant or the Savile chant, the better. And I think the Millwall game is probably what's brought this to a head for the club, because it was sung for such a sustained period of time. And the club's initial strategy, it hasn't led to the song fizzling out. So that's why they got to this point.
Yeah, I think, some of you listening might not necessarily agree with the club's stance. Some of you might be, pleased that this sort of action has been taken. But ultimately, I think we can all agree that it's just in bad taste, just poor taste.
And it's not needed. Like this, people get very precious about their chants, and they talk about censorship or free speech or taking banter out of football. There are 1,000,001 things that you can sing at a football game, and that Leeds fans do sing, that are funny and sometimes a bit spiteful and maybe sometimes in bad taste, and they don't make light of a horrific situation, either here or in the Middle East. There are 1,000,000 things you can sing that nobody bats an eyelid about. Leeds fans have a rich history of coming up with brilliant chants for players or for situations or for things that happen completely on the hoof. I spoke to a former kit lady at the club a couple of months ago. She's 97, I think, and she was at work during the Revy era. And she was marveling and remembering how quickly fans came up with chants for situations that had just happened on the pitch, or a flashpoint or whatever. Leeds fans have been brilliant at that forever, and they just don't need to sing this one.
Yeah, we'll draw a line under that, as I'm sure the club will be keen to do as well. But that's the last we'll discuss of that on this week's pod. We will be back for part 2 after Daniel Farke's press conference. Welcome back to part 2 of this week's Inside Elland Road podcast. Graham, you've just been up at Thorpe Arch for Daniel Farke's press conference. What were the headlines from what Farke had to say this week?
No real headlines. I mean, it was just all
right. We'll all go home then.
Just a chat. No real news. So Popey started with a question about how many Valentine's cards did you get, which was, asking a married man that. It's
it's very much not his topic.
It's very much not his topic. He said the people who matter, recognized him or gave him affection. So that's his family, Sam Byram. Maybe he's had a nice card from Parag. Brilliant opener from Popey though, because it really tickled Farke. And then we moved on to the team news. Vober had his surgery yesterday, and that went well, but he's still be out for 6 weeks or so. Patrick Bamford, although Farke had kind of said he expected him back in training prior to this, it was a 6 to 8 week injury, and he's 6 weeks, 2 days in. So he's still within the kind of expected time frame. And he's got kind of, I guess, the guts of 2 weeks to get back into team training to kind of make that period. And then it'll just be about trying to get some sort of rhythm for him, because there just hasn't been any this season, because there hasn't really been any game time, has there? And that's about it, because there is no other team news, because there's no injuries. They're in a really good spot when it comes to fitness and availability. He's got all 4 midfielders available. He's got Struijk back. His fullbacks are all there. So he's got serious options ahead of Sunderland. But it was interesting that he talked about not wanting to rush Pascal back in. I think last season is very much fresh in his mind with what happened with Pascal and that season-ending injury midway through the season. But he doesn't have to rush him back, does he? Because he's got Ampadu, who can play next to Rodon, and has been there for been there with many clean sheets, and then he's got ample options in midfield.
Yeah, as you said, you know, the Vobra and Bamford stuff was kind of the headlines, if you can call them that. Although we knew that neither was realistically going to play a part against Sunderland. I think what he said about Struijk potentially suggests that Ethan Ampadu and Joe Rodon will continue as the central defensive pairing. Certainly for Sunderland, and you know, maybe even for Sheffield United if all goes well at Ellen Road on Monday. I did like Popey's opener that came through on the feed, which was kind of the opening gambit on the feed. I thought interesting, but you know, you got what people might not understand is you got to loosen people up sometimes when you when
get into his ribs.
Exactly, yeah. Just put them at ease, make them feel like it's just two people having a chat. And you know, Popey's excellent at that. You know, recently celebrating his 50th anniversary at the BBC. You know, it was. But to tell you what, though, I bet he could book his own hotel.
Shut up. 70 years man and boy at the BBC. Adam Pope, congratulations to him.
I would actually like to pick your brain on that, actually, on the topic of Valentine's, because we haven't discussed it. And you know, while the two of us are, you know, sat here having a bit of quality time, I would be interested to know which member of the Leeds United squad you would like to go for a 1v1 meal with. It doesn't have to be romantic.
1v1. Why are you making it sound?
Because it's footballers. Everything's competitive.
You're making it sound like a duel.
It can be entirely platonic. But which Leeds United player would you like to go for a meal with?
I think I should say it's not just that it could be entirely platonic. It would be entirely platonic. So let's have that right. Let's jot that down from the start. Let's see who would be the best company for a 1v1. So is it an eating challenge, or is it just, you know, a meal and a chat? Are we going to go axe throwing?
No violence involved. It is you know, St. Valentine's Day.
Let's throw axes at one another, at targets, and in a safe environment.
Just a nice, friendly, platonic candlelit dinner, maybe al fresco. Depends.
Okay,
you know, you could maybe go with. Oh, we're doing. Oh my God, we're finishing each other's sentences. Maybe we could rely on sort of the individual players' nationalities as being instructive as to the cuisine that you might be having.
Okay, well, I did not so long ago have an unbelievably good sushi meal in Leeds at that place. What's it called? It's by the Marion Centre, I think.
Well, remember, we're not sponsored by them, so
yes, and if they want to sponsor us, then I'll name them in a subsequent episode. So maybe sushi with Tanaka, but I think we'd probably have to bring a translator along just to get the nuance, and also perhaps to help with my accent for some words that he might not quite catch. But I am fascinated to know a bit more about him, just mainly because we don't really know anything about him. Ilya Gruev. Ilya Gruev's a bit of a dark horse because he speaks certain languages, different languages, many languages. But also, he, as we discovered this week, he's got a very caring side to him, because he completely off his own back went and arranged involvement with a charity, a care charity, and then planned and executed a surprise trip to Ellen Road and a guided tour behind the scenes. and a moment in a meeting in the changing room with 3 people who are cared for by that charity, and then arrange for them to have VIP access to the Millwall game, which I thought was absolutely superb. I mean, lots of Leeds players do lots of stuff with charity throughout the year. A lot of that is organised by the club, and the club gives them opportunities to get involved with the foundation and different things. But now and again, you'll get a player. I think Barry Douglas did some stuff. I know Robin Koch did some stuff with the children's charity, and now Ilya Gruev as well. So Ilya Gruev's obviously got hidden depths, and we also know absolutely nothing about him as a person. Like, what do you imagine? What do you imagine he does of an evening?
You could ask him 21 questions. Yeah, I mean, you probably wouldn't give him the opportunity to take a bite of his meal because he'd constantly be answering questions. But
did you watch the Northampton game, Ilya? Did you watch it? Were you watching, Ilya?
I think Tanaka and Gruev are very, very sensible picks. I'm amazed that you didn't go for Pascal Struijk. However, that is because I did stress that it would be Platonic. So that obviously does get in the way of your true intentions with Pascal.
Behave. I'm old enough to be his father. Yeah, and then I mean, there's some of them that passed the pint test. Definitely. Somebody asked me recently because we were talking about. I was chatting to someone, a couple of Leeds fans, and they were asking about, interactions with players and social interactions with players. And I was talking about having a drink with a couple of players in Spain and saying that in the current crop, they're all pretty young and there's not many that you think you'd have that much in common with. And so maybe the pint test would be failed unconditionally, not because of circumstance, not because they're horrible people. You just think there'd be not a great deal for us to talk about. I'm very old now. But actually, there are a couple that you think they'd be very good company on a night out.
You never know. There might be a few Harry Potter fans in the squad.
Well, Dan James certainly gets a lot of Harry Potter jokes. So yeah. I mean, if I phrased it as an evening out with Graham Potter rather than Graham Smith, then maybe I'd get a.
I can't believe that we didn't come up with that joke at the time.
Yeah, I can't believe none of you came up with that joke either, and all of you journalists involved in wordplay as well.
On to Sunderland then on Monday night. What are we expecting? What kind of game do you think Leeds are going to set out to play? What type of response do you think that we'll get from Sunderland?
I don't know. I don't think Sunderland will go all out, but I think they probably recognise, maybe they should recognise, I don't know, that this is a game that they probably need to win. That if they're going to stay in the automatic promotion hunt, they need to win games like this. But I don't expect them to go full gung-ho against Leeds because that would be folly. But I think they will try and play football. I think they'll stick to their principles. Incredibly impressive season for them, isn't it? I mean, I know you're a big fan of everything they've done.
Excuse me, I went on a Sunderland podcast earlier today and I behaved myself.
Yeah, how many barbed, backhanded compliments were there though that you coded into your speech?
2. One every 15 minutes, which I think is absolutely fine.
No, that's fine. A lot of Borough fans would have got a lot more digs in. I think.
You know what? That's really starting to grind my gears.
Yeah. So, yeah. What are you expecting from them? Do you think they'll try and play?
I think that it'll be a low-scoring game because I think Sunderland last season came to Ellen Road, were very pragmatic, and it worked for them. Again, the circumstances were a little bit different. It was kind of last chance saloon for automatics for Leeds at that time. So there was maybe a bit more stress at Elland Road. The environment was a bit more fraught. But this time it's very much a case of, well, Leeds might have to win to go back or draw to go back top of the table if Sheffield United beat Luton. So yeah, I think I'm expecting a different type of game to the recent fixtures at Elland Road. I think Sunderland will be one of the better teams that have arrived. They don't seem to have too many major injuries. Wilson Isidore is playing really well, except for the penalty misses at Burnley. You've got Joe Bellingham, Dan Neil, Enzo Lefebvre, all very young, mobile players. I think who else is there in their midfield? I do really like their midfield. Chris Rigg, he's got 4 goals, I think, this season. I think I'm looking at a statistic that says he's got 4 goals. Patrick Roberts has actually started to, provide from the wings. And defensively, they seem pretty solid. I mean, I know they've conceded 28 goals, which is 9 more than Leeds, but that's still less than 1 per game this season.
And
So
they've got physicality in Hume and Ballard as well.
Yeah, Ballard has a history of scoring own goals though. So
Hume's also nailed on for a yellow card, so jot
Hume
that
is
down
absolutely
as well.
nailed on. And you know, I could see 3 of the back 4: Dennis Serkin, Luke O'Nien, Dan Ballard, and Trey Hume. I could see 3 of those getting booked at Ellen Road.
I really like Luke O'Nien because he looks like a 14-year-old playing a man's game, but also because he's a bit of a character and he does ridiculous things like jumping on the back of an opponent as they're trying to break away to take a yellow card. If you're going to take a yellow, don't wipe the player out in a potential injury-causing challenge. Jump on his back.
At least make it funny.
At least make it funny. So I do quite like him. It'll be an interesting one. I mean, the last time you said it'd be a tight game, Leeds won 7-0. So goodness knows what's going to happen.
I didn't say that for the Cardiff game. I actually didn't say that. I do remember saying it for the Swansea game, and that was 4-3. So look, that's the way that I think Sunderland will set up. They'll set up pragmatically, but they do have enough to counter with. Leeds, I don't think will go too gung-ho, as in I don't think that we'll see a Tanaka Rothwell pivot in the middle. I think it'll still be Gruev in there. I think it'll be Ampadu at centre half. I think it'll be an unchanged starting 11. And I think prediction wise, I'm going to go 1-0 to Leeds.
To Leeds. Okay. I'm going to say 2-1 to Leeds.
Who's getting the goals then?
Tanaka is going to get one, and Peru is going to get one.
You predicting that Tanaka's going to score, whether it's on this podcast or in private, it's like that run which Mark Lawrenson did for the BBC in the predictions. Every week he'd predict Liverpool to win, and someone collated his last 128 predictions, and he didn't expect them to lose once. I mean, again, you know what? There's a good chance that Tanaka might score because he's going to start. But I'm going to stick with the tried and true. It's going to be Joel Peru. Yeah,
I mean, if there's going to be a goal, there's a good chance it's going to be him. I just have a feeling every game about Tanaka, every single game.
You badly want him to score some more goals. Do you have anything more that you'd like to discuss, maybe about your newsletter before we sign off?
This week's newsletter was a bit of an ode to Daniel James and what I think young players at Thorpe Arch could learn about Dan James and why he's having the kind of season that he is. Remarkably, he's only once this season gone 3 games without a goal or an assist. He's just been, even if he has a bad one. Remember at Hull when he was absolutely shocking, still scored. He bounced back almost immediately. And he's been like that all season. So newsletter this week was looking into the reasons behind that, with some insight from Farka as well.
Yes. Any indication of what next week's will be?
No.
Okay. Right. Interesting. Because
you'll be writing it.
Because I'll be writing it, yes. And I have not thought about it yet. But I suppose it'll be probably on the back of what happens at Sunderland. I've got a couple of numbers in my head rattling around that I can maybe weave something out of, but nothing concrete as of yet. What's that sound? It's people signing up to read the Inside Ellen Road newsletter because I'm going to be writing it. That is. Can you hear that as well?
No, I can just hear you dominating the newsletter, dominating the conversation.
Yes, sometimes you have to be there with a quite greedy podcast performance. Right, that's everything from us on the Inside Ellen Road podcast this week. Have a lovely weekend. Bye for now.